presenting the speaker does not imply endorsement by our organization. The speaker's comments and her opinions are his or her own, and Friends Health Connection does not control the content of the webinar and is not responsible for the content presented. The event is not intended to constitute or replace medical advice, and appropriate medical advice should always be sought by your own medical professional. So today we have with us Janet Conner, who is a popular writer, teacher, speaker with a simple message. Everyone has an innate spiritual intelligence. We just need to know how to activate it. In Writing Down Your Soul, How to Activate and Listen to the Extraordinary Voice Within, Janet shared the simple writing method anyone could use to activate their own inner voice, engage the soul with vibrant dialogue, and magnify their creative potential. One highlight of Writing Down Your Soul is that is of a particular interest to the Friends Health Connection community is the findings she quotes in psychology and neurobiology that explain why writing is such an effective tool. In her book, Writing Down Her Soul, Janet has received a 5-star rating on Amazon, and after 3 years of publication, it is still one of the top ranked books in the journal writing category. It's in its 3rd printing edition as well. Her second book, My Soul Pages, the companion writing journal to Writing Down Your Soul, just came out last month. Currently, Janet is living in Florida, where she is also working on her next book and trying to explore the ultimate question of what does your soul want? Friends Health Connection would like to thank Janet and everyone else who is participating today for joining us. And now, without further ado, we're very excited to introduce Janet Conner. Welcome, Janet.
Well, thank you, and I am beyond thrilled to be here because writing is a healing tool. And I've held this intention for so long. Whenever I speak, I say, I want this book. Once I present the science that we're going to go over in a couple of minutes, I always say I'd give anything to get this book, in the hands of people who are ill or taking care of people who are ill. Well, I guess the universe was listening because you contacted me. The Cleveland Clinic is now putting both the book and the matching journal in their store and online. Magazines are asking for quotes. All of a sudden there's this awareness that writing is a healing tool. Just before I logged on, I just Googled cancer and writing research, or cancer and journaling research. And sure enough, what was just a few years ago considered even an odd question to ask, there's now great interest and great research going on. So I'm thrilled to be here because writing is such a powerful tool, and that's what I want to share with your community, not just for the people who are in the experience of struggling with a health issue, but their families, their caregivers, everybody has something they want to talk over, something they want to put on the page. The something I needed to talk over, and the thing that brought me to Deep Soul Writing, was a divorce. Now, it seems like everybody's got their, let's call it an invitation to go deep inside. For some people, it's addiction, it's a grief and death in the family, it's a birth issue, it's bankruptcy. For me, it was a terrifying divorce, a divorce that I wasn't sure and my family wasn't sure I was going to live through. And the story is in Writing Down Your Soul. But here's the funny part. I was non-functional. Probably like a lot of people when they get a diagnosis that terrifies them. I was completely non-functional. I sat in the living room and cried for, I'm ashamed to tell you, not days or weeks, months. I sat and I cried. Very intelligent way of handling my problem. So heaven sent the dog. This is the only explanation I have. My Great Dane puppy dragged my untouched copy of The Artist's Way down the hall to me. These are his actual little bite marks. I had never touched this book. I owned it like a lot of people, thinking, someday when I'm not such a busy executive, I'm going to start journaling. Well, even in the state I was in, I realized, we got to do something with this. You got to sit down right now. So I did, and I made it to page 15, and I quote it in my book, this is the original cover, and it's the one I've got all marked up. But in honor of the new matching journal coming out with this incredible owl, this is the new cover of Writing Down Your Soul. But this is my darling, came in the very first shipment, and it's all marked up, as you can see. So I made it to page 15. Now listen to what it says on page 15 in The Artist's Way. Anyone who faithfully writes will be led to a connection with a source of wisdom within. When I am stuck with a painful situation or problem I don't think I know how to handle, talk about being stuck with a painful situation. Sitting and crying in the living room was not exactly solving anything. I will go to the pages and ask for guidance. That is as far as I got. I should be ashamed to admit this, but I never read the rest of it. Because in that moment, in those 2 sentences, I was given the information I needed. So I ran in my office. You know, if I had an untouched copy of The Artist's Way, I had an untouched journal. This is one of them. I have gazillions of these, but this is one of them. And I simply grabbed a pen because I had never read a book on journaling. I had no instructions on journaling. So I followed my heart's instructions. And I scribbled across the top of a page, "Dear God, comma," and I just started to vent. I vented all my pain, all my issues, all my fears, and I made the most astonishing discovery. Once you finish telling your story and you ask a question, you will receive on the page astonishing guidance. Might not be guidance you want, because it might be guidance about your thinking, your behavior, your choices. So I struggled a little bit with that guidance, but I eventually started following it. I also discovered, this is my current journal, you can see that this is a very vibrant, living conversation. If you're looking for pretty pages, forget it. You show up. You show up as you are, worried about what you are, happy about what you're happy about, and I simply have a conversation every day, and I talk about what's going on with my life, and I ask questions. Questions are the magic. So I discovered that I could ask questions and receive guidance. I discovered that I could ask for comfort and be exquisitely comforted. I discovered that I could ask for protection because we were in a very dangerous situation. And no matter what happened, and there were guns and road rage and just about everything that can happen in a high conflict divorce, nothing ever happened to my son or me. So one day I actually said on the page, "Dear God, thank you for the guidance, thank you for the comfort, thank you for the protection. Can I ask for money?" And because my back was up against the wall and I had never read about how you're supposed to do these things, I simply wrote on the page, "Dear God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know that you are. Thank you in advance for $10,000 for the attorney." 48 hours later, I had $10,000 for the attorney. This is how I live my life. Every single thing happens on the page. So when I got the contract to write this book, I sat right here in this office and I thought, what am I going to write about? I mean, really, there are, at that point I did know, magnificent books on journaling. Christina Baldwin, Life's Companion, Kathleen Adams. There are wonderful books on journaling. What could I say that's special, that's unique, that's helpful? Well, I did what all writers do. And if anybody listening is a writer, I'm giving away our big secret. We write the book we want to read. And I wanted to know, come on, why does this work? How is this possible that I not only made it through the divorce completely safely, following the guidance I received here, my home that I lost in the divorce was replaced by a beautiful townhome. My son had to give up his private education. I found him exquisite public education. The business that went from 6 figures to went back to $108,000 in 1 year in a 12-month time period. How does this work? Because there really are only 2 explanations. Explanation number 1 is I am very special. I was pretty sure that wasn't the explanation, but hey, it's an explanation. Explanation number 2 is this works for everyone. If it works for Janet, it works for everyone. So there has to be a scientific explanation. And we are very blessed to live at a time when there are a lot of people writing about the intersection of spirituality and science. Larry Dossey, who has been on the Friends Health Connection, really broke that open in the 70s, talking about the efficacy of prayer. So I went to the science. And this is where I started with James Pennebaker, who is the chair of the psych department at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. He has a lifetime of research on what happens when you write. He calls it expressive writing. And I quote the highlights of some of his research in my book. Listen to this. Writing. Now, the research he did, people were writing for 10 minutes a day for 4 days. Come on. I wrote probably for an hour or 2 hours if I was really upset every single day. So on this tiny window of expressive writing, the research showed that the writers who wrote about what was going on in their lives and their deepest thoughts and feelings about it, so they showed up naked on the page to say, here I am, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm worried about. They had lower blood pressure, higher immune function for 6 weeks after the study, improved mood, better physical health for 6 months, a more positive outlook on life, reduced anxiety, reduced depression, and this is the one. This is the research that just sends my heart fluttering. They had a better ability to fight infection because they had more active T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes are the agents in your body that destroy cancer cells. Writing heals. Writing heals. So it is a magnificent tool for people, regardless of what is going on in their lives, to show up, pick up a pen. Luckily, just last month, there's now a matching journal for Writing Down Your Soul. So the book, let me show you the proper cover, Writing Down Your Soul teaches you how to write this way. Show up, open up, listen up, and then follow up on the guidance you receive. And there's kind of a PhD on questions in here, the questions that work and the questions that don't. And now you have this fun place to have the conversation. And I'm so tickled that Canary Press put this magnificent owl on it, because what is the symbol, the universal symbol for all of history of wisdom and guidance? Athena ran around with an owl on her shoulder, right? So how perfect is this? And so now you have a place to have the conversation. Of course, you could get any journal and have the conversation. All I want to do is remind people that here's a place to go. Yes, you can meditate. Yes, you can pray. Yes, you can go for a long walk in the woods. There are many, many tools. But who knew that picking up a pen, something so simple, can move you into a resolution, an understanding of your story, and bring you guidance, comfort, protection, and even financial support. So that's the message I want to give everybody, that here's a tool everyone can use to find their way through life.
Should we open it up to some Q&A?
Absolutely. I wanted to bring you this basic information. I know one of the questions you want to ask me, one of the questions everybody wants to ask me is, how do you write this way? The secret, what I discovered in the research, because reading Pennebaker, it's so clear that writing heals. There's just no doubt about it. But you still wonder, okay, but why? What's going on in your body? What is going on that as you're sitting there writing, you are actually changing your life condition? You're bringing yourself a lower blood pressure, all of these wonderful benefits. What's going on? Well, the person who answers that question is Candace Pert, Molecules of Emotion. This book is not as easy to read as Pennebaker's, but I highly recommend it because she is a neurobiologist that explains what's going on in our brains when we write, when we do any spiritual practice. And listen, I just quote the critical paragraph in her book. This explains why Pennebaker's research works. This explains why writing heals. The brain's only food is glucose. I didn't know that. Which is carried to the brain in the blood. Blood flow is closely regulated by emotional peptides, your emotions, which signal receptors on the blood vessel walls to constrict or dilate. If our emotions are blocked due to denial, repression, or trauma, certainly during the divorce, I was just, a PTSD. I was living for 3 years in a state of very high trauma. So I imagine if I had had a scan at that time, my carotid arteries were squeezed down to nothing. But here's what happens. That deprives your brain of vital nourishment, and it leaves you foggy, less alert, limited in your awareness. As a result, you may become stuck. Well, this is exactly what happens to us when we're experiencing something traumatic. We just get frozen, whether it's a divorce or a scary diagnosis or addiction in the family or whatever it is. So I picked up a pen and I said on the page, thank you for the research for Pennebaker. Thank you for this psychological insight, 30 years of research. Thank you for Candace Pert explaining what's going on in our brains and why trauma actually prevents us from being able to solve our problems. I need something else. I don't know what it is, but I know that you do. Thank you in advance for this new information. Within 48 hours, I was listening to Robert Colt on an interview. I had a conversation with him, and he's the one that connected the dots. The reason Pennebaker's research shows what it does, the reason Candace Pert's research shows what it does, is that when we write this way, deeper than journaling, we are getting into the theta brainwave state. And it's only in theta, this isn't Janet speaking, this is brain scientist people, the only brainwave state in which you have access to breakthrough thinking, real creativity, is the theta brainwave state. Now, when we keep a diary, you're in the beta brainwave state, which is kind of where we always are, all day long. We're in hypervigilant, got to go, got to do, don't forget. You can't solve a problem in the beta brainwave. And, of course, and worry. When you are worried, you are in the beta brainwave state. Well, where are we when we are struggling with a health issue? We're worried. We're worried about our finances. We're worried about what's going on in our bodies. We're worried about our families. We're worried about our friends. We're worried. You're in the beta brainwave state where you don't have access to solutions. You don't have access to creativity. You don't have access to breakthrough thinking. Now, when you journal, it's a little different than writing down your soul. You can get into some deeper alpha. Alpha is a wonderful brainwave state, but you still don't have access to these ahas, these breakthroughs. You have to be in the theta brainwave state. And so, writing down your soul is a way to get out of beta. You can start in beta when you pick up a pen and you're saying to your voice, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to call it God. You can call it Waldo. You can call it Henry. You can call it Beloved. You can call it the voice. That's what most people initially perceive. When you have this gut reaction, this feeling, you'll say, well, I just felt this voice. That's this spiritual intelligence that every single one of us has. That isn't odd or woo-woo or unusual. Every single one of us, we are spiritual beings. And so we have spiritual intelligence. We just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it even in our religious centers. People don't talk about spiritual intelligence. So we talk about IQs, and in business today we talk about EQs, emotional intelligence. Everybody has an SQ too. We have spiritual intelligence. It's just that we don't talk about how do you activate it. Well, the simplest, easiest way on the planet is to pick up a pen and start having a conversation with the voice within, the voice of wisdom within. And so one of the first things people ask me is, how do you write this way? How can we get out of that worried beta beyond alpha and into the theta brainwave state. You want me to walk you through that? The 7 steps are actually I feel so strongly about them that I asked the publisher to please include them in the journal. And so, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's 7 steps to get into the theta brainwave state while writing. I also would be happy to give this real simple. I get all this information on one piece of paper. When I teach workshops, I always, the most important thing is to give everybody these 7 steps. And so if anybody wants to send me an email at my website, writingdownyoursoul.com, I'll be happy to give them this information. I also recorded a 50-minute teaching video about it because it's so important. And you can get that at writingdownyoursoul.com. But in the 10 minutes that we have, I'm going to go through it very, very quickly, but I would like anybody listening now or in the future to not just know, oh, there's this lovely way to write, and maybe if I get the book, I would like to give it to you right now. So, step number 1 is to set your intention. And you can do that just by having a thought. But don't leave that step out. The minute you set your intention, I want to go deep inside. I want to connect with the wisdom within. I want to activate the voice. I want to activate my spiritual intelligence. The second you do that, you've left journaling behind. Number 2, address the voice by name. You don't have a name? Just say, dear voice, dear one, dear beloved, dear teacher, dear friend. Eventually, and there is a chapter in the book called Who or What is Listening, that walks you through an exercise where you ask the voice, what is our private and personal name? And everybody gets a name. But for now, simply, dear voice, dear one, dear friend. But this reinforces this intention that you're going deep inside to that which is within you, but it's greater than you. Because on your own, okay, you're worried, you're scared, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to solve your problems, but that spiritual intelligence inside of you does. So give it a name. Then step number 3 is write by hand. Now, it doesn't mean that you absolutely cannot get into the theta brainwave state on a computer. But when you're on the computer, you're looking at the monitor and your eye will see a misspelling, something. And even if you turn off those green and red lines, your eye sees it. You do have all this education and all those English teachers yelling at you for a reason. It's now in there. So your eye sees it, delivers that information, and it yanks you back into conscious mind. So if you can hold a pen, I highly recommend writing by hand. You're also crossing the midline every time you write, which is a beautifully important thing that the brain gym people talk about for brain health. Write by hand. If you cannot write by hand, the expert in this field recommends voice recognition software. So step number 4 is activate all your senses. The more senses that we activate, the deeper our spiritual intelligence goes. Well, your eyes are obviously activated. Your ears, you might not think are activated, but they are. If you had a little SPECT scan on your head while you were writing, all the parts of your brain responsible for hearing would be firing. Now, at my website, you can get theta music, real pretty music. We're just pretty, kind of like classical music, but it was recorded at the 4 hertz sine wave, which is the same as the theta brainwave. So that music somehow really does, to me it's just miraculous, it does help you stay in the theta brainwave state. And you can get that at Writing Down Your Soul. But you don't have to do anything. Your brain is hearing. And you want to, of course, you're activating the sense of touch. You don't have to do anything there. So that leaves smell and taste. For smell, which is our most powerful sense, make sure you do something. I like to use a scented candle, but it doesn't matter what you do, but activate the sense of smell. And then when I am finished with my writing, following the wisdom of Professor Emoto's research in Messages in Water, and I tell the story in my book about how I learned this from a blind Navajo shaman, I then drink my water at the end, and I whisper aloud any of the wisdom, any of the guidance, anything that came through on my writing. And in that way, the Navajo have had water present at every healing ceremony for 8,000 years. In that way, the healing enters your body at the cellular level. So you've activated all your senses. Next, ask questions. I told you that was the magic. And there's a massive amount of information in my book about questions. Ask lots and lots and lots of open-ended questions. Write fast. It's a little miraculous. It's a little trick because your conscious mind is sort of sitting on your shoulder and wanting you to stay in the old patterns, the old story. You already know your old story. What you want is new information. When you write fast, you have a tendency to get ahead of your conscious mind, and you'll be shocked. New information, things you had no idea were even in your mind, will show up on the page. Write fast. And last, the seventh step, be grateful. Be grateful. Say thank you. You were heard. If you follow those 7, and again, they are in my soul pages towards the front of the book, or you can get a lot of information about them at my website, which is the same as the book, writingdownyoursoul.com. Or send me an email, and I'll send you that sheet that has all that information on one piece of paper. So I hope that's helpful. It was fast, but we had to watch the time. So if everybody was scrambling and taking notes, you have the basic information you need to start writing, slipping quickly into the theta brainwave state where your spiritual intelligence will simply blossom.
I think a lot of our listeners might be wondering if writing down their soul is for them. Who do you think that this kind of exercise is for, and who would really benefit from it?
Well, I started out with a trauma. You certainly don't have to wait until life bops you over the head with something upsetting, but it does seem to be the human condition that when everything's going fine, we just toddle along and pay our bills and go to work. And then, something terrible happens, and it has a tendency to make us look around and say, what can I do? And that is what happened to me. So it was something upsetting that got my attention. However, writing, based on Pennebaker's research, everything is showing that writing is simply a magnificent tool to activate your spiritual intelligence. And so, like today, I don't have any health issues. I don't have any financial issues. I'm a pretty happy camper. I love my work. I still show up every day and I have a conversation. And I ask for guidance about my teaching, about my next books. Everything happens on the page. But in particular for this community, a connection of friends around health issues. Absolutely. People who are experiencing the upsetting experience of a health challenge. Certainly they want to write. They're caregivers who are exhausted or frightened or worried or wondering, what can I do to help my mother, my sister, my son? The medical providers, think of the lives they live. Seeing 25, 50 people a day, they have so many questions, so many issues. What's going on? People who are grieving a loss of a body part, a loss of a friend, a loss of a health condition. There really isn't anyone who doesn't get value out of simply opening this window, this channel into their own spiritual knowing, their own internal wisdom. But I particularly wanted to give this to you, to the health community who is trying to care for one another and give. Here's a tool. Here is simply another tool that might change someone's life.
So my last question is, where can our listeners find your book and get in touch with you?
Well, it is published by Canary Press, and so it is, what's the euphemism, available everywhere books are sold. Sometimes it's actually in the bookstore. You might walk into a large Barnes & Noble and, maybe it's not on the shelf, but you can ask for it. People who want a signed copy, and that's why I don't actually have. I have to show you my little piece of paper as opposed to the book because I get orders every day. People want a signed copy, and I have another shipment coming myself. Of course, it's on Amazon and all of the online. It's also on Kindle and Nook and all of the digital. And, of course, the journal, you don't want a digital version of a journal because you want to be filling it with a handwritten, you want to be picking up a pen. But this is available everywhere books are sold as well.
We have a member who's asking, how do you keep your mind from interfering with your heart when you're writing?
Well, it doesn't have to be a conflict. See, this is the great benefit of writing, is that you're simply showing up as you are. So maybe you're feeling emotions. Maybe your mind wants to tell the story. You don't have to kind of say, well, is this my mind? Is this my heart? You simply start telling your story and how you feel about it. Pennebaker's research said, tell the story, say what happened, and your deepest thoughts and feelings about it, so there's no separation. It becomes a union. And if you start writing quickly, that gets your conscious mind to shut up, and then I think your spiritual intelligence, your emotional intelligence, your heart can come forward. So I would say just don't worry about that. For now, show up, address the voice by some sort of name, and simply say, well, this was interesting. I heard the most amazing thing today. You're not going to believe it, but it's about writing in order to connect with you. Well, hello, my name is Mary, and here I am. And just start a conversation.
The same user is asking if you have a brain freeze and you don't even know where to start, where you recommend people start with their writing.
Well, you start with where you are. And so if where you are is, I don't know what to say, you actually say that. So you say, let's say you want to call it Dear Friend. So you say, Dear Friend, there's so much we could be talking about. I don't even know where to start. I'm absolutely frozen. I'm so frightened. Help me. What do I do? If you start just spitting that out, sort of pretend you're having a conversation with a real person, and start spitting out, here's what's going on, and I actually feel frozen. How can I, and write fast, then something will start breaking through. You could just go back over the things you heard today in this conversation and ask lots of questions about, is that true? So just begin. I think that's the best advice I can give anybody. I mean, yes, of course, if you want to read the book to give you all kinds of stories about how other people, this will get you going. My story will probably inspire you. By the way, you can read the first 2 chapters, the preface and the chapter that's my story, how I discovered the voice or how the voice discovered me, for free on the home page of my website, writingdownyoursoul.com. Up at the top, under the original cover, under this, you can see 2 chapters. And read that, and that'll get you started too.
Okay, and I have, you've mentioned that you can go to your website, writingdownyoursoul.com. Is that the best place for people to kind of get in touch with you and get that 7-step handout that you have?
Yes. Go to my website, poke around. There's a lot of information. And then you can just say, contact us. Well, us is me. So when you put that in, I'm going to get the email, and you can say, I heard you at Friends Health Connection, and I'd love to know more, and I'd love to have that handout for the 7 steps to get into Theta.
Okay, that's great. So I know we're kind of running short on time, so I want to wrap everything up. I know I really appreciated being able to hear your method for kind of getting outside of your own self, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity to have the recording, the audio on our website so everyone can kind of share it with their loved ones. Do you have any last comments you'd like to make or any last words of advice?
The number one thing I want to leave people with, especially people who are facing something difficult right now, is you are not alone. It's that simple. When you start writing and something starts to come through, something that you know you didn't write, tears will just come pouring out of your eyes. It is the sweetest experience to know I'm not alone. You are not alone. You are heard. Every moment of every day, you are heard. So pick up a pen and say hello.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a very, very great afternoon, and I am looking forward to hearing some of the feedback from our members. I think that they probably enjoyed themselves a lot.
And thank you.
Like we said, if you go to writingdownyoursoul.com, they can, our listeners can get in touch with you, Janet, and they can also get more information about how to unlock your theta writing skills. And that is all for this afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us, Janet.
Thank you.